Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video, we're going to have an in-depth look into the HeadHunter variants of Breaking Point builds. We'll go over what works the best in the slots that you have available to you, going over Chain Killer and Overlord, or even pairing it, of course, with things like the Gift. We'll go over their numbers. Also, there is a new setup that we can kind of reach with a high-end variant with a NinjaBag. Actually, the first NinjaBag build I've added to the build collection ever. With rifles as well, as that has become available now due to Zwia coming into the game as well. We'll go over some of their numbers. Also, we'll go over the NinjaBag backpack version of the marksman rifle headhunter. That one includes, of course, the one with the mix of having hotshot in back in the day, last season. Having hotshot, having aces and eights, and having Araldi with the chain killer, and hotshot, of course, and Habsburg. That setup has, of course, gotten one new piece in the terms of Breaking Point for it. So we'll go into what we can do there. So yeah, let's go over these new headhunters. And what we're going to discuss today is mostly based on this spreadsheet, which will be linked down below as well, of course, as always, so that you can look at it for your own self and also get your own conclusions out of it. But also, I'm going to interpret it here. It is, of course, a little bit tiny here. We're going to zoom in a second. But first, let's actually discuss what set of builds we're going to talk about. And that is actually this third one in it. We'll actually zoom in. But it's the third set of numbers down here, as we have a BP, a Breaking Point, and in different versions here, and also being compared to each other in here. Although, of course, we have the numbers of the hotshot variants up here. These were already used a little while ago by me with the hotshot, with it having been pre-stacked for the hotshot, for some of the numbers, comparing Chain Killer and also different versions of how to set up hotshot with either Chain Killer plus Gift or Araldi plus Gift, or going Chain Killer plus Araldi, which is my preferred setup, or even the two-piece Habsburg with the buffs pre-stacked and kind of what their numbers were with the SR1 at grade 25. And also we even compared it to a NinjaBag variant where we had Walker and Harris and Araldi in there just to compare those numbers with them. We also back then had three builds down here, which were the Chain Killer Araldi without the pre-stacking, so going from the first shot with Vigilance and Bloodsucker, so different backpack talents and seeing how those affected it. Then we had also a bunch of marksman-based NinjaBag builds. Today we're going to mostly go over the Breaking Point and how its headhunter setups will work. We'll also go over, indeed, that NinjaBag, as we have two new additions here in different variants, replacing different parts of that other variant. I'll show the build when we get to it. And then also at the end here, there is a high-end rifle headhunter, and then it has a TT-ish, which is a tech tank-ish. We'll go over a build that will likely become the next build showcase towards the end, and everything will be timestamped down below, of course. If we go into the game, the build we'll be discussing today is Breaking Point in 4 pieces, and then different variants of, or different combinations of basically Chain Killer, Overlord, and then also the Gift. Overlord, of course, has the rifle damage, so Chain Killer, of course, has perfect headhunter, Gift has perfect vigilance, and headshot. Usually we go through all of them just because the Gift, for instance, does alter the first shot, but then you usually end up with a lower max shot if you're, for instance, going Chain Killer plus Gift. That usually has a better first shot and a worse cap shot, as expected, of course, as headshot does not go into the headhunter calculation, but weapon damage does. But headshot does affect the first shot more so than the 10 rifle damage here. If we go into that spreadsheet and scroll down a little bit, just because we'll be looking at the Breaking Point variants. So this initial one is the version of this build with Chain Killer and an Overlord, And then also with 2 different weapons. So the main weapon I've ended up using with this build is especially this grade 26 Diamondback. It is 26. I should have actually stopped at 25 to maybe make it a little bit more, as other weapons are 25 in there. One grade isn't going to make that much of a difference. We're also going to look at one version of the 1886 with Determined, but Determined doesn't really work with this build. The one thing that, of course, we have is that if we're firing, when we swap a weapon from one slot to the other and then back, or we don't even have to wait for the other slot to come all the way back out. We can reload. We're using that reload mechanic, and that reload mechanic actually does break HeadHunter, because if I have HeadHunter and I go to a different weapon and back, in the same time, Determined gets dropped. So you can't use that reloading mechanic and Determined together. So it's not a good fit. I've also I've been enjoying this build a little bit with Diamondback, as it is pretty powerful. It did receive a buff to have the same base weapon damage for both the same as the 1886. It also has 8 rounds now, so that is actually pretty powerful. Let's go back to the numbers in here, and that's this for first 2. So the first 2 are the Chainkiller with Overlord. The second one here is with the 1886. That is the change there. Then we're going into a Chainkiller Overlord with Bloodsucker. So we're giving up Vigilance for Bloodsucker. Bloodsucker is a really good talent, but also a stand-in for basically all of the non-vigilance talents. So if you were to want to use anything else here as a backpack talent, although I can't think of one non-damage talents quickly other than Bloodsucker that you would want to use here, but just as a stand-in, what happens when you give up the backpack. Then also going Overlord Chest and then Memento. So within the game as well, I went out of my way and got an Overlord Chest, because for some setups we do want to try that out also later on with the gift, as I actually forgot to grab that quickly from my stash, as I thought I had actually kept it on the character video. So if we were to go Overlord Chest here together with a Memento Backpack with a Headshot, of course, here as a third set, and then also charging the Memento all the way up. What numbers do we get there? And then also going variations in between Chainkiller and Gift, and then Overlord Chest plus Gift, because we have all those options to try out just to see what those numbers are. But we actually start off with just the Chainkiller and Overlord with Vigilance with the Diamondback. What we start off with is this first shot being 6.5 million. Now, there are a few important points that you kind of want to reach with a weapon. One of them is at around 3 million-ish, you can one-shot red. Around 6.5 million-ish, you can one-shot purple, especially assaulters and such. Of course, rushers and snipers have less armor and health combined. And then LMGs generally have more, and then you have stuff like Moorhounds and stuff, of course, that have completely different ones. But especially for Grenadiers and Assaulters, it's around that level. And then you have also 10 million, which is for Elites. That is when you can start one-shotting Elites, the Assaulters and the Grenadiers. And then 20 million-ish for around the 20 million mark, you can also start one-shotting Names, which can be quite handy, of course. So, for instance, if you compare this, we have a first shot of 6.5, which is enough for purple. Then a second shot of 15, which is enough for elites. And this then includes also, with 15 million being so much higher than the 10 million needed for elites, it is enough for actually one-shotting an elite LMG. And then it caps out at 21. Now, this is with the Diamondback and with its crit chance active. So this is 3 fast shots right after each other. In actual gameplay, you might actually have a mark on the second person that you're shooting. That will actually bump the second shot up by quite a bit, because you're getting a second 20% amp on that shot. Whenever you're shooting a target that is marked by the Diamondback, you're actually getting a 20% amp on it, meaning that this number, the second number, can also be quite a bit higher if you're waiting in between it. If you're storing this shot basically and then making this shot. So in this case, this is 3 shots quickly after each other while the buff was still up. Just to have a more consistent level instead of, I feel it's a little bit cherry picky to go with the other one. But we can actually reach a little bit higher than these numbers, but all 3 numbers are basically fine. for a HeadHunter build. Now, if we compare them, for instance, of course, to a Chainkiller Araldi, a hot shot, the Chainkiller Araldi on the first shot can start with a purple in the same way. On the second shot, especially because, of course, on the second shot, the hot shot buff is active, then you can actually, on the second shot, just one shot unnamed. That is quite the difference, a very noticeable one. You really do notice that a marksman-based HeadHunter really is a lot more powerful. But that doesn't mean that rifles are meaningless for HeadHunter, because they do acquire a lot faster. So the time when you're ADSing, how fast, especially after running or such, how fast it becomes pinpoint accurate is a lot faster. Then also we have the thing that we can use shields. Now, especially with the Memento version, for instance, that we have here, we can have a 2-tier shield pretty easily. And that does make a difference, because that is one main difference between using marksman rifles and rifles, is you do get to use things like shield. You can be a lot more mobile because of that, because you can poke out with a shield instead of, for instance, being in cover. With a hot shot, especially, you kind of also want to be in cover. Rifles also have a lot more initial ammo. When we have, for instance, in this season, we have the low ammo modifier, the low ammo directive. That one affects rifles a lot less, especially slow firing rifles, a lot less than marksman rifles, although it's not a big issue, because all of these also have the sharpshooter specialization, so as long as they're in cover, they're recovering. Yeah, if we actually then compare first, before we go into the Memento one, so we have the Chainkiller with the Chainkiller plus Overlord backpack with Vigilance. Both of them with the different weapons, and then the second one being with the 1886. The 1886 doesn't have enough for a purple starting out, especially if it's not marked. I do have to note here, you do need to have the purple marked for this purple, for this 6.5 million shot that we have here, and that's just enough for a purple. So yeah, if the purple isn't marked, you can't actually take the shot on him and actually kill him. Which can sometimes be annoying, of course, but you can always weapon swap to and back from the Diamondback to acquire a new target, and if there's a red around, you definitely can still one-shot them. Then it goes to 11 million here, and then to 20 million for the cap shot with the 1886 with grade 25. The second shot being 11 million means that you can actually use this, for instance, for and then just take the reload and then use this for activities and such, because you can still kill most elites with this 11 million on the second shot. So you do need to start on a red specifically, basically, and then you can go to a purple or elite. Then we have the Bloodsucker version. This basically always falls down 20%. We have the same amount upstairs when we compare the Chainkiller or the MMR versions, even with or without the pre-stacking from Hotshot active there. It basically just drops down 20% across the board. And this is still workable. This is again with the Diamondback. We have 5.2 million on the first shot. That's not going to be enough to kill a purple at all, unless it is a rusher or a sniper. But with the second shot, you can consistently kill elites and above. So this is still very much workable, especially if you're doing activities and such where there is a large amount of reds available as well. The thing is, though, the second you're dropping down to not having that one shot on a purple, what that means as well is, for instance, with control points, solo heroic, you always have a purple, one singular purple, and then the rest is elite. So you do need to actually have the first shot be able to kill a purple, preferably. You can, of course, two-shot him and then go to an elite from that point on. But once you take that first shot, they're going to scatter and such. If you can start on a purple before combat really starts, kill the purple in one shot, then go to elites, which, for instance, the hot shots can do. Yeah, that is quite the difference. That just feels so much better. And yeah, the Bloodsucker variant, of course, then has the bonus armor from Bloodsucker. That is actually works pretty well, keeping you alive. As you do stack up a lot of kills, you have Bloodsucker pretty full up. You have a chunk of extra buffer before you hit your health gate. So Bloodsucker isn't a bad option, especially if you're pretty aggressive with your build, which you can be a little bit more, I feel, with these going with Diamondback. Then yeah, if we go into that Overlord Memento setup with the Memento stacked up to 30, on the first shot we don't have enough for purple on the 5.5. Second shot can be an elite or up, but the third shot as well, same with the Bloodsucker actually, is a solo that you can't actually one-shot unnamed. That's the reason why I wouldn't actually, while I have enjoyed the Breaking Point setup just to run around with, and then just using the Breaking Point as just a reload mechanic basically, which is maybe a little bit underutilizing the gear set, but works pretty well just because you don't have to take that horrendously long reload of 1886 or Diamondback. With this, I wouldn't really take it up against control points, because when you take it against control points, you're guaranteed a name. Well, if you're doing control point 4s, heroic control points, then it kind of feels awkward because you'll always lose your stack at the end, meaning that you don't have it ready for the defense wave once you trigger them. And it just feels a little bit awkward. That's also why I wouldn't per se use these for bounties or such, where a hotshot would fit in much better. But for activities and such, just having the much more aggressive playstyle of rifles over marksman rifles, even unscoped marksman rifles feels a lot worse than just a rifle without a scope on it. Lastly, we can kind of look at a Chainkiller plus gift and Overlord plus gift. So here both we're still, with the Overlord, of course, we're putting HeadHunter on just an Overlord piece on the chest, and then both of them have the gift backpack. And there is actually an important one here, because I might actually, as I have the build picture, as this build did get added actually to the build collection, I'll zoom out here a little bit, as it's 1.11, the variants as well are in there, with also the Overlord chest with the gift and Memento with the Overlord chest. There is actually, I feel, a little bit of value if we go back to our numbers here. There is actually a little bit of a value to going Overlord plus gift. This is 6.8. Would let this, for instance, be a grade 24 or a grade 20 weapon. This Diamondback is, of course, 26. 26, if you add 25 and you have that, if you're completely an endgame player, like that is, of course, achievable. But this at grade 20 would still be a one-shot kill on the first purple. That actually does make a big difference, because this one, if you drop it to the initial one, the Chainkiller plus Overlord, if you drop it to grade 20, it actually can't start on a purple, even if it is marked. So there is actually here the one time that we actually want to push our first shot a little bit higher. With it being an Overlord chest, though, instead of the Chainkiller, as we have it there with the Chainkiller plus gift, or against the initial one, which is all of these percentages are comparing against, we do actually, on the second shot, we do lose quite a bit, although actually this percentage, there's something wrong with this percentage. I will fix that up before we go through, but we can just see that the number is lower. Or actually, no, this is the second shot. That's what I was looking at. This is the first shot, of course. It's first shot, it's 2% higher. That's what we're doing it here for. I was kind of side glancing and not paying attention. But the second shot, we're dropping 10%. That's fine, though, because we're still 13 million. This is still enough to deal with most elites, even the LMG elites. And then our cap is still respectable at that 21 million, but still, of course, less than if we were running Chainkiller plus Overlord. That is the thing. Usually when you're going with the gift, also on hotshot builds, you're kind of dropping your first shot a little bit up, and your last shot is dropping a little bit down. Yeah, that is the kind of going over the Breaking Point setups. I think actually I will go with the Overlord plus gift as actually I don't have the gift here, but with a gift backpack, I think that setup works the best, because you could do that even with a grade 20 Diamondback. Let's move on to the NinjaBag setups for marksman builds. And yeah, we're gonna head into some ninja territories. Hopefully we don't, get stabbed in our sleep from behind by some people dressed all in blacks. Yeah, here we're comparing. There was already a setup for using NinjaBag for HeadHunter builds, which a lot of people seem to like. I wasn't one of them. I still am not really one of them. But it is undeniable that we have enough good bonuses now. During the PTS, I actually included one version that we discussed about, because we do have one more with Breaking Point. We have a 25 marksman rifle damage bonus available as a 2-piece. So if we stick this in with the NinjaBag, we get a 25 marksman damage. In there, actually, what I did is I had a chain killer and I had an Iraldi piece, and we replaced the aces and eights piece, which was 15 marksman damage, with a Breaking Point, which is 25 marksman damage. So we just gained basically against the old version 10 marksman damage. One person brought up that what you could do as well, of course, is to not replace the aces and eights piece with a Breaking Point, but to replace the chain killer with it, because then your first shot, of course, goes up, but you don't have perfect chain killer anymore. Here we have Iraldi chest. This is actually from the turret drone hybrid HeadHunter that was a build showcase not too long ago, one that I do really enjoy. That's why it has skill damage here. For the purposes here, this would need to be with weapon handling, would be weapon handling, headshot, and then HeadHunter. But for the purposes of our testing, that weapon handling doesn't really matter here. So we're just see this as just, not existing. And then we have this new setup available to us for marksmen, which is, to have a Habsburg, to have that 2-piece Habsburg here again as well. Not a maxed out piece. The weapon handling doesn't really matter, but just for testing purposes here. The stats that do matter are maxed out. And in this case, a hotshot piece, an aces and 8, a Breaking Point. All three of those giving pretty hefty marksman rifle bonuses. Same for Habsburg, also having been increased to 20 last season. And then, Iraldi instead of chain killer, and also having both versions actually still available here. So we're comparing them here to a non-stacked hotshot, so a chain killer Iraldi, not the Habsburg variant per se. Because I feel this is kind of more of a contender against those kind of builds. If you have the 2-piece Habsburg variant for hotshot, you can do things that none of these builds can do, which is to, if you have the hotshot buff active, if you're on the second shot, or if you're on the fourth shot or further, you can start on an elite. No other setup in here does that with an SR1. Without the SR1, with a chain killer Iraldi with a high enough graded model 700, you can do the same, but SR1 feels a lot more comfortable. Then we have, the old version. So that is then not with Breaking Point in there. The Breaking Point didn't exist back then. This is that older variant. This started with 7 million, still enough to shoot an purple in one shot and murder them. The second shot is enough for any elite, and it did have enough of a cap to kill named. We even tested it against, as these are also used in past in-depth looks kind of things, which were the NinjaBag variant, but using 3 pieces of hotshot to still have the hotshot buff up, just so we could also compare it to the other ones with the hotshot buff up. And that also was adequate. The thing was that this was at the edge of being able to one-shot a purple. Now, for instance, for this season as well, we have Ragers. This 6.7 would not be enough to one-start on a purple that is Ragered, but also it would be very weird for a purple to be Ragered and you're starting on them, because, you should be, the first shot should be without Ragers being active yet. And anyway, when the 17 million and then 24, that's all fine. Now we have these 2 new variants. So the first one is the one that we discussed in the PTS, basically, where I didn't consider removing Chain Killer yet. I was still going with Perfect. So that had Chain Killer, and then Iraldi was still in there instead of the aces and eights. And that setup, back then, we got ourselves a decent setup where, we're starting at 7.2. So this, even with a low-graded SR1, would be enough that you could drop a little bit of grading on the SR1 and still start on a purple. And setup-wise, it is actually decently easy to get, because it is 3 pieces that are red cord already on the gear sets. You would just need to find 1 piece of Habsburg to put into here that you would need to recore. All of those things aren't that hard. A chain killer is, of course, is pretty easy to get, but it's not significantly easier either than getting just a hotshot build together. Its 3 numbers are perfectly fine. The second shot is enough for, almost enough even for an elite, or for named, even much more than enough for an elite, and its cap shot is much more than needed for an named. Now we have this final version, this last one in this list, and that is actually this one, which I would actually consider the better version as well. Going with Araldi instead of Chain Killer, we do get instead of having also 5 weapon damage and then 5 DTA, we're getting 10 marksman rifle damage and also 15 headshot as bonuses. We are, of course, losing that second shot bonus that Perfect Headhunter has. Instead of getting an additional 150%, we're getting an additional 125%. But all of those still line up decently well enough that, yeah, you can lose a little bit of grading. Actually, there's not too much big of a difference between its first shot. Its second shot is, of course, much lower, but actually its third shot is a little bit higher. And especially having this first shot be a little bit higher, I find that, yeah, you can drop even more grading on this SR1 and go to like 10. And still, even though this doesn't seem like much damage difference, it does make a difference, actually, for how much grading you need for that first shot to be effective at killing a purple. I think that there is some value to a build like this, as we've gone over. I personally prefer the bonuses that a full hotshot has, as, yeah, you do get the healing and you do get the bonus armor if you're at full armor, and you also get that reloading mechanic, letting you chain shots a lot more easily. I'm perfectly fine with 4 pieces of hotshot, and that's my preferred one still as well, out of all of these hotshots. But this one, if we just compare it, for instance, to that just Chain Killer RLD plus Vigilance, we're getting a lot closer to it now. And then what you have here as well is that you have a blue core and a yellow core. So you are a little bit more tanky. If you're using your skills right, you might have a little bit more, for instance, pulse, or a little bit long duration on a recon drone. But that is still one of the things with this. I feel this blue core and this yellow core on this ninja bike are still kind of wasted because you can't effectively use them. But there is actually a new addition to the build collection that I have, and we'll go look at that. And I'm using a ninja bike there as well. But in this case for rifles, and then with rifles, I feel you can get a lot more bang for your buck. Let's go look at that build. And here we've come to this mystery box at the end, as you see here. It says high-end rifle headhunter tech tank-ish, and that's what the TT is. If we go to the game, I've added this actually into the build collection already as well. I was actually that enamored with it. That it is already actually in the build collection. It is on second account, meaning that it's built on 5, and it is 5.08. This build has actually, I've been really enjoying this thing. This will also be the subject of likely the upcoming build showcase, the next one. As we have one more bonus now to add into Ninja Bike for rifles, with Zwia being available. I always try to actually make tech tank-like, at the very least, with a Headhunter. And that was basically never possible until we had the bonuses for it, which we have now. And yeah, that is this one. Now, numbers-wise, this thing only hits for 3 million on the first shot, and then 7.8 million on the second shot, and 15 on its final shot. Now, these are, of course, very low numbers, and I kind of just wanted to push this one into here because just to compare it with, Chain Killer, or, well, hotshot builds, and also the Breaking Point setups, versus something like this. But then this is actually very specialized because, as I was talking about earlier, 3 million is enough to kill a red, 6.5 and above ish is around the point where you can kill in purple, and then 10 million and above is where you can kill any elites, and then you need around 13 and a half ish for LMG elites. So this has those covered. It doesn't reach the point where it can kill a named, but for just doing activities, I've been actually really enjoying this setup, and we really couldn't reach this because actually with the weapon ungraded, so this one has the 1886 with the tournament, because yeah, we're not using Breaking Point, we can use the tournament, we just reload it by hand. It isn't too bad because we do have a ton of weapon handling on this build because the two-piece contractors, for instance, as well, the two-piece contractor bonus. We have a 61% reload bonus. We're not even actually running reload on, we're running reload here on this as well. We could, if we had, if we needed a little bit more, for instance, or if we didn't have the grading, as that's the place I was going, as I lost my train of thought. If we didn't have the grading, we could actually put the headshot mod in here. Without any grading, this can just barely kill a red to start off with. With some grading in here, at least 10, or at least 5-ish, you can actually get by with just with having the reload buff or the reload magazine here. And this thing can just barely kill a red. Its second shot has to be a red or a purple. It still can't hit an elite. And on its third shot on forward, it can. So you might say, why would you do that to yourself? And also, why? Who are you, and why are you adding a ninja bike into your build collection? Rabble, ninja bike always bad. You're dumb, and I'm going to punch you now. Before you punch me, this is a 5-tier shield, and this is a 3-tier artificer. And of course, with rifles, we can use that. This is the first ninja bike build that I feel is actually potent enough to be in here. We could make something similar with a memento, and I actually still will likely do that, but I don't think the memento in any setup will be able to kill a red with similar amounts of shield tiers, because here we do have, because of the Picaros as well, for instance, in here, we do have, because we could actually put a breaking point piece in here for 25 rifle damage. But of course, then this shield would go to 3 tiers. Having a 5-tier shield, even if it isn't supported by a memento, which, for instance, with the tanks it is, and goes into the 6 million-ish range, here it is a 4.1 million shield. That's still 4.1 million. That is not... you can hold this out in front of enemies for quite a while. And then also the Artificer, it is a 3-tier Artificer. It is healing for 44% every 10 seconds. So we're basically getting, let's say, 2 million-ish every 10 seconds to play with. That is actually a significant enough shield. And of course, with the HeadHunter, we can just hide behind this. Just even if I need to reload this thing, I can just hide behind the shield. I've been really enjoying this, and we'll actually visit this in an build showcase pretty soonish. And yeah, going back to its numbers, sometimes you just need just enough. And that is the case actually with a lot of these. But then you have to kind of consider, if you're giving up damage, why are you giving up damage? So for instance, with this, for the Bloodsucker can keep you alive a lot more. You do actually get a lot of kills. So if you can murder with Bloodsucker up, that is actually pretty good. But for instance, here we see that issue then. So with the Bloodsucker, and this, for instance, why I do run Vigilance on the Chainkiller, that first shot, the difference here between 7.8 and 6.2 is the ability to one-shot a purple without pre-stacking the hotshot. That Vigilance in here, especially with Chainkiller Araldi, even with a grade 25 SR1, we need that Vigilance to take it just above a purple. So I, for instance, don't run Bloodsucker on my hotshot builds. But for instance, here going with the Ninja Bike, I think they are all adequate, but you're still kind of wasting that blue and that yellow. In this case, with the rifles, at least, we're using it for a shield and Artificer. Especially now that the season as well has cool skills as one of its talents. The Artificer does not care of if it does or doesn't have charges. It will just send the charge as long as it's on your back every 10 seconds. And that makes this one actually workable for me. Much more so than, for instance, the Ninja Bike builds for HeadHunter. I would much rather just run the full hotshot with Chainkiller Araldi with Vigilance to have that first shot purple ability just out of the gate without any pre-stacking, without any shenanigans, without, you know, even trying to do stuff like using the Achilles pulse or anything. I much prefer that, and then has much more powerful, of course, after that. But this, for instance, then we're going the other way. We're just limiting ourselves to exactly what we need. And for instance, for activities, solo running around, doing territory controls, propagandas, doing hostage rescues, public executions, there's generally going to be a red around. I have to shoot the red to start off with. This is, again, not with a diamondback or anything. We don't need the marking on them. It has, at that point, determined, because it is with determined then, and from the first shot onwards, we need the second one then to be a purple. So we're still very limited where all of these other ones are, can start on elites at that point. But that's still enough. We can either grab a red or a purple. And from that point on, then we can start murdering everybody. And then on top of that, we have a really powerful shield to hide behind. And sometimes that's all you need. And that is why I kind of wanted to include this one in here as well. And we'll definitely have a look at this one as one of the newer additions into the build collection as the first NinjaBag build that has ever gone into the build collection. We'll have a build showcase, and that's likely going to be the next video. And yeah, to actually go into the conclusion then as well is, the different variants of HeadHunter that we have available to us now are pretty impressive. We haven't gotten a few pieces that we can put into other builds. The Breaking Point, while I wouldn't per se recommend it just to outdo a hotshot for what a hotshot does, it does play pretty differently, and especially with the Diamondback, I actually don't mind it at all, just in its play, because it is with a rifle, it is much more aggressive because of that, because you can actually run and gun, where with the marksman rifle, you're much better off keeping your distance, being far away in the back, in cover as well. With the Diamondback, you can be a little bit more aggressive just because of the scope time being so much lower. And then you can go also pretty extreme with it, as we saw with the in-game of something like this, and setting it up with just the minimal amounts that you need to get by. The NinjaBag version for just going NinjaBag with the marksman rifles is actually adequate now. I would say this is the first time that, because yeah, we've gone from this basically this 89% to this 92%, this 7 million to the 7.2. So actually now you can actually drop a few grays, for instance, here, and still be able to one-shot a purple, because yeah, 25 is not what everybody has, of course, available to them. So likely even with a grade 15, you could get by and one-shot purples with this. And that's enough. That's perfectly fine. I personally would still pick the 4-piece hotshot bonus, and that doesn't work well with Ninja, because at that point you're also pretty low on the numbers, and yeah, you're not consistently just getting those purples in, especially for instance now as well with the Ragers up. So yeah, still workable. I would still rather have the hotshot bonuses, also for the reload, also for its damage, also for its healing. But a viable choice here as well. I won't be adding it to the build collection now. So yeah, workable setups for Breaking Point. Take your pick, play around with it. Diamondback comes highly recommended with it. We might even eventually have a look at it as its own build showcase, but I'm much more interested in going into some other builds, as for instance, yeah, as we discussed here, the next build showcase will be actually this build, because I like it a lot, and I think it has a lot of value for a lot of players. So yeah, I hope you join me for that one as we'll go into those, and also I will do an in-depth guide at some point afterwards on Countdown. And if you enjoyed this video, if you can, please do all of the algorithm stuffs down below. And as always, have a good night.